Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. I am really out of sorts today and starting late once again. Just in general, distracted and not really feeling streaming today for not really a good reason. Probably stayed up all last night. Once again messing with my Wi-Fi. I was doing an experiment on my Wi-Fi, which I'm sure nobody cares about, in that to see if you have a bunch of Internet of Things devices that are connecting at very slow speeds, like W802.11b speeds, is that potentially dragging down the overall network, and or is having two separate virtual access points, one for the 802.11b slow speed devices and one for the faster 802.11g 2.4 gigahertz or 802.11n 2.4 gigahertz devices. Was that potentially slowing things down? And generally what it's the problem that's happening is that all my smart bulbs don't seem to always get the signals on a fairly consistent multiple times a day basis. And honestly, I think it probably is just a case of the fact that there's too many devices on my Wi-Fi setup. I pushed it too far, and too far is a lot shorter than what you would think. Almost all Wi-Fi routers, I would say, claim they can have up to 256 or 255 devices connected. But the truth is, simultaneously, you're talking 20, maybe 25 devices at the same time. Well, I shot past that amount of devices very quickly with smart bulbs. When you have a light system, whether it's pocket lights on one circuit where you have 3 bulbs there, or a chandelier light that has 4 bulbs, or a ceiling fan that has 4 bulbs, and then you just throw in even individual lamps with 1 bulb, like each one of those, the cost of just adding a lamp with 1 bulb out of a limit of 20 to 25 devices is extremely expensive. And it's just a thing I guess you just won't see until unless you you could get around it by buying a bunch of really expensive access points and having separate access points, but it probably wouldn't help you much anyways in that case, because you would have to have the bulbs in different rooms, and then access points would have to be in different rooms, and they'd still need to be kind of in a different setup, and that only just kicks the can down the road as the problem. Inherently, Thread as a connection standard needs to come out, and it needs to come out faster, more. It needs to really work when it comes out, and it needs to be a lot cheaper, because connecting via Wi-Fi is not smart. Connecting via Zigbee is too expensive, where you're paying potentially $25 per bulb. While it's nice to certainly be able to have bulbs that would change their color temperature and the and color is probably not that necessary as a feature, and temperature is kind of a one-time thing that if you just buy all of your regular light bulbs and make sure they're dimmable to the right temperature that you want, you're probably much better off on that. Inherently also in the room setup I have too, if all of the light switches were simply run to the same panel, then I could have easily had one device control everything. But in practicality, the solution I was going for was to turn on many wall switches that are all throughout a fairly large combination of an open floor plan between 3 different rooms, but visibly and lighting wise they're all the same room. But yeah, in one case, if I had replaced the light switch with a dimmable light switch, that would have been 1 device instead of 4. In another case, it would have been 1 device instead of 3. In another case, it would have been 1 device instead of 2. And in another case, it would have been once again 1 instead of 4. So at that point, you're talking 6 plus another 3 would be 9, plus another 4 would be 13 devices getting broken down into 4 devices. So yeah, that would be the next step to fix this, and then I would just have a bunch of bulbs that I don't know what you do with that, really. If anything, it almost feels like they shouldn't always be connected, and that you would put like smart bulbs in them and then program them and then just tell them to disconnect from the network after that, and then you would just have to reset the whole settings by default, and then you would control it with a single light switch, which is also a dumb idea. So yeah, really there should just be like some dip switches on the sides of really cheap bulbs to tell you what temperature and what color you want it to set at, and then a standard light switch would be good enough in most scenarios. Or you just get around all these problems by going to thread, which that is the solution I am going to have to go with, is that I'm hoping I can just get this to work well enough, and I think I can get it work well enough by just telling the Tuya app in its programs to do the same thing like 3 times in a row. Just like the signal didn't reach 1 device that time, so let's just do it again. Let's just do it again. So sending the bulb signal off, then off, then off really doesn't change anything to the eye of people. It just ensures that it actually sends the signal and the signal gets received. Inherently in my Wi-Fi experiments, using DDWRT makes it a nightmare. And honestly, I should go to OpenWRT. That's another thing that I'm gonna try to hold off until Wi-Fi 7. But as soon as there's a Wi-Fi 7 decent looking OpenWRT router, I think I want to buy that while my current router is still working, and migrate all of my setup over to OpenWRT instead of DDWRT, because mostly it just seems like there's a limited number of chipsets that are going to be supported in the future for DDWRT, and there's simply not as many people working on it. Basically 1 person working on it completely. I got a victory here. I also played some of this off screen, but we really are screwed here. We have like 5 days to get to 5,500. We could probably do that, but then it is going to be a struggle to get to 11,000 after that point, unless I just start to have a whole bunch of victories, which maybe that will be the case, because it is possible that people will get bored of this experience and stop playing, or the more skilled people will stop playing. Yeah. But to wrap up was probably a bunch of rambling. My main suggestion right now is, unless you can get a thread device and you can see reviews that say it really works for several months on end, a lot of these Internet of Things YouTubers are using a device for a week to 2 weeks at most, and often they're getting like pre-release or special versions of the devices and being told to do very specific things with them. So anything off the beaten path, of which there isn't very much of a beaten path because it's a brand new device, could lead to total disaster and the device just not working at all. So you basically need like a 1 year later, what are you still using type video to give you really good advice as far as Internet of Things devices. And I can say 1 year later, on my like Xsense, which are Tuya compatible, the ones I got that are smoke detectors, they seem to work. In the sense, and that's literally, I guess, all I can really say to them, because I haven't done anything to make my smoke detectors go off, except for once, like a year ago, just to test it, and they don't seem like they ever really lose connection, which I suspect is because they are always asleep, or they've gotten some Wi-Fi update of some sort. Send this to the graveyard, and then special summon this. It's mostly the light bulbs that are the problem, and I don't know if that is in part because let's see. This guy can attack a second time. Good. That's what he can do. I'm trying to figure out what he can do before I do anything. I could have easily missed that. Yeah. Minimal number of devices. And it's a shame that like none of these Internet of Things devices are wired. Like, it would definitely be a nightmare to have wiring added to light bulb sockets and things like that, to have some kind of weird USB-C type connector or Ethernet cord, which, yeah, 2 or 3 wire type Ethernet cord would probably be what you would want. It'd probably be something closer to I2C, as far as a connection throughout the house. It's insane, though, that there aren't any proposals to send signals via some kind of chirp protocol or capacitance change on the electrical wires. A truly well-designed smart house system would say, we figured out a way on the 120 positive AC voltage in the United States and the neutral signal or the ground, which they probably shouldn't touch the neutral or ground at all as far as sending any signals that way. So really on that one wire of the 120 positive at 60 hertz, they should figure out a way to use some kind of chirp signal protocol that would change it from 120 to like 121 volts, and then do it in such a distinctive way that looks like a digital signal, while it would just be ignored as noise on the line by any non-digital smart device. And I think you could do that, certainly, particularly if it was kind of a broadcast concept. The thing there is you'd want it to be two-way, and I don't know how you make it two-way. But yeah, because there's nothing even close to a wired standard, you can't really wire anything to a local area network, and so everything gets in the Wi-Fi, and then everything wirelessly is just competing, and it definitely all just seems like it's a system designed to eventually fail because people weren't looking far enough ahead. And the fact that we've gone for years with Wi-Fi routers, small home Wi-Fi routers that could really only connect to 20 devices, and people haven't run into this problem, really just highlights how few devices are actually using the Wi-Fi, and how few devices people are really using. And back in the day, certainly, like 2-3 laptops in a family, a couple smart TVs, maybe. That's not going to get you up to 20 or 25 devices. But the number of bulbs in a room, depending on how brightly well lit you want your room to be, that'll definitely get you to that. Or every outlet socket. If you wanted smart outlets. I don't know if you really need smart outlets as much as you want smart plugs. And you really only want smart plugs on a few things. Although it would be nice to be able to measure the power usage on every device plugged in. It's just not necessary outside of a few things. So I would say, and I am just rambling still, this is why I'm out of sorts, almost certainly, and why I'm just not super motivated to focus on playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or why I wasn't super focused on playing Lego DC Supervillains, which I am, I think, one level short of the main story, and then I think there's going to be like a post-main story situation that gives you about 5 more levels, and then there's like DLC, there are 5 more levels. It might be that there are 5 DLC levels that only unlock after the main story has been finished, but the story is all over the place. It's with far too many characters, and so it's been really hard to stick with the game. But I did make 2 or 3 episodes yesterday. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to get anything done tomorrow. So once again, I'll just have more of a delay. Let's see if I can ease my way out of rambling about smart bulbs here. Let's see. Yeah, I've been so distracted I haven't even done my Destiny Child dailies today. So I need to hurry up and get that done. Destiny Child's done with its current event. Part of the problem certainly is not just the smart bulbs, it's just that there were some also bits of interference. Even just having like one overlapping SSID in the 5 gigahertz pattern seemed to really cause occasional connection issues. So I'm having these occasional connection issues, and the bulbs and the Tuya system is failing, and it seems like, even though they're both connection issues, seems like they're both separate things too, but they could be all the same thing. I don't mind losing here as much when they're somewhat fast about it. Oh, so yeah, I wanted to mention this. I was just about to experiment with changing my YouTube shorts so that there would be some blank space on the right side of them, because in YouTube Advanced there are some pop-up buttons that show up on the screen. Turns out on the standard YouTube app those pop-up buttons don't show up, and on the desktop app those buttons don't show up, so it would have been a real mistake to have done that. That being said, it is... I didn't do it not because I realized that was a mistake. I realized it wasn't a mistake because the YouTube Advanced app has finally, after probably what was about 6 months of... Let's see. You don't want to activate this one. Then you want to activate this, so you can attack a second time, so we can win. I'm surprised I'm going to win here. I could have activated Call of the Graveyard to activate another spell for daily quest, if that's an issue. Yeah, all of a sudden this feels a lot easier than when I was playing offline. So yeah, after about 6 months of YouTube Advanced still working, even though they kind of abandoned it, after, I think directly because Linus Tech Tips talked about the software and the people got somewhat scared away. Although I don't know how scared away they are, because there's also a YouTube Revanced, which Revanced is a very early replacement of the Advanced Manager, still using the same Advanced Micro G code for non-root devices, and then it is patching versions of the official YouTube app, which, yeah, now on YouTube Advanced, if you try to look at a video, it says you have to be on a newer version of the app, and there is no new version of YouTube Advanced. And I definitely am not willing to go back to the bad days on YouTube. And this is funny for a YouTube content creator to say, but it just sucks. It is 100% suck to watch commercials on YouTube for me. Like, I watch videos usually at 2 speed. With the Revanced project and patcher, you can actually increase the number of options on how fast you can watch something. So I'm even going to potentially try to watch things even faster than 2x speed sometimes. But yeah. Trying to watch things or listen to things, the commercials, the ads are just unacceptable. Unacceptable enough that, honestly, if Google finds a way to make it too difficult or too frustrating to skip ads for free, then, or not watch ads for free, then I would potentially even consider buying YouTube Premium, which that's a weird thing to say. Okay. And then we'll finish these 3. Wonder if the spell would have done anything to help. But yeah. So yeah. You basically have to go to the YouTube Advanced Discord, and then there is a posted note to how to install the Revanced Manager, and then you have to manually patch it. Inherently, when you manually patch it, the Google Play Protect service is going to ask you to submit the patched app you just made for scan. Do not say yes to that, because that is working against your desire there. That would just, it's like making a virus or using a Windows activator malicious tool and then submitting it for inspection by Microsoft. Or making a virus on Windows and then submitting it via Microsoft's scan tools. Oh man, I activated too early there. Maybe I did a good thing, but I don't know if I did the right thing there. So yeah, YouTube Vanced is dead. Let's start talking about actual video game news though at this point, because I think I really could just ramble on, and we already started late. So the new Last of Us PC patch optimizes CPU and GPU use, fixes crashes and more. So maybe with this latest 1.0.4.0 patch, we might start to see a better experience as far as Last of Us on PC. One would hope. Otherwise, you are going to be kind of stuck. With whatever it is. Okay. So we're gonna do this. Then we're gonna do this. Then we're gonna discard this. Then we're gonna summon this. Well, say yes to activating this. And then he's going to cancel that ability, which doesn't really matter. Okay. Yeah, I don't understand what this spell is all about. Why you'd even want to use this unless they had an extras monsters on the field, which then I could use up to 6 fusion monsters from my graveyard if this guy had an extra monster. Well, the big news that we should have been talking about up until this point is that the CMA, that is the UK organization, has made a blocking decision on the Activision Blizzard merger, which, just like in the United States, they are basically just following suit that the FTC had already made indications or said that they were going to block the merger, and so now it's just a case of it's going to go to the courts and Microsoft and Activision Blizzard are going to fight for it and probably win the decision to finally be able to merge. GameDeveloper.com here goes has an article reaction what happens next for the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal. This is literally just a podcast announcement, special podcast announcement for them. But you don't have to listen to their podcast. Like, they're going to fight it in the courts, and I would still argue, I think, there is a very much a case where the part that the UK has any authority over as far as Activision Blizzard may just be one small studio in the UK or maybe King in the EU. And at that level, it may be pretty easy to just acquire the rest of the parts of the company and spin off King or whatever studio. Inherently, since we're already at a point where most of the talent has fled or become irate or gone crazy in some other way at Activision Blizzard King, this entire merger was always either, on one hand, corporate protectionism to stop unionization and to protect Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision Blizzard, or it was a bid by Microsoft to just own the intellectual property. Which inherently, I don't know if they couldn't always make some kind of shell company and have the intellectual property sold to that shell company, and then that shell company be acquired by let's see, we could negate this by tributing this. I'm not sure if that's worth it. In a reaction to this, we have Brad Smith, who is the vice chair and president of Microsoft, which I don't even know who this guy is, really. He definitely doesn't show up much. Putting out just a almost certainly pre-written by lawyers response. We remain fully committed to the acquisition and will appeal. The CMA's decision rejects a pragmatic path to address competition concerns and discourages technology innovation and investment in the United Kingdom. We've already signed contracts to make Activision Blizzard's popular deals available on 150 more devices, and we remain committed to reinforcing these agreements through regulatory remedies. We're especially disappointed that after lengthy deliberations, this decision appears to reflect a flawed understanding of this market and the way the relevant cloud technology actually works. Which I believe some of this response, that bottom part was potentially added on, and the rest of this was pre-written. And I think it reflects CMA kind of looking at Microsoft as potentially too big of a company in the online streaming service concept. That the Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Game Pass Ultimate as a feature is potentially so much better than PlayStation Network or Amazon Lua or Google Stadia, which is now dead, that they were saying, well, you would just become super powerful in that industry. Although oddly, I don't think they really even said they were deciding on that factor. If anything, I think they said the opposite, that even though that's a concern, it wasn't really their main concern. Again, I'll just activate things for daily quests reasons. And then we have another GameDeveloper.com, or no, Video Games Chronicles article. Analysts say the Microsoft Activision deal is not dead ahead of the UK appeal. Wedbush, Morgan, and Ampere, and analysts weigh on CMA's decision to block the $69 billion merger. It's very easy for Microsoft to also be pissed off on just how long this all took for them to say no when and I guess it is perhaps slightly different as far as how the laws have been manipulated and written by rich people, in that in the United States the Federal Trade Commission has to sue Microsoft to stop the merger, and in the UK Microsoft is going to have to try and sue the CMA or just the UK government to appeal a denial. We also have somewhat big news, I guess. We may be seeing the beginning of companies admitting that they can't go at 100% alone, even in the case of Nintendo, because according to Video Games Chronicle, Nintendo is officially returning to Gamescom this year. The company last attended the German Game Expo in 2019, so there was this whole pandemic thing, so it's very possible, although 2019 it really was 2021 when the pandemic happened, but I'm sure that lengthened it, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo is just kind of generally planning to do Gamescom every other year, or some years yes, some years no, depending on what they have to show. But yeah, Nintendo Directs alone, obviously not the entirety of what Nintendo wants to do to promote its games, and since E3 is effectively dead, they don't have many options other than the Tokyo Game Show and Gamescom, and the Tokyo Game Show itself is just too small. Let's see if we can special summon this. Now, inherently, I still kind of wonder if the reason why Nintendo's not doing Penny Arcade events is much more to do with just Penny Arcade not showing enough reverence to Nintendo, or the Video Game Awards not really involving Japanese people enough, and thus Nintendo really doesn't seem to ever have any presence there either. Whereas I have to assume that Gamescom either does pay more reverence to Nintendo and treats them, smoozes them, bribes them somewhat to show up, or if it isn't, maybe more of a case that Nintendo is thinking in the long term and saying, we want to do Gamescom because Gamescom is a lot older than the Video Game Awards, or even the Penny Arcade Expo. I haven't heard of anything lately around Evo, so I have to assume that at part it was probably slowed down at the very least by the pandemic, or completely canceled or changed in its own event. And at a certain point, Evo, being a fighting game tournament, is a very different experience than a game expo like Gamescom. Inherently, I think it will fall on the Video Game Awards in particular to try its very best to convince more Japanese-centric companies to show up. And I don't know how they do that other than to fly in a bunch of Japanese people or have the events around the world Which that wouldn't be the worst idea, frankly, is that since it is this closed off party anyways, to say we're going to have it in Tokyo every other year would make sense. Or in Germany every third year, and then Tokyo every third year, and then LA every third year, and just move it all around. I'm not really playing enough here. I'm trying to get all of my Destiny Child, lewd waifu gacha game. Get those daily quests done as we're doing the dailies here. We're double dailying at the moment. Doing the daily quests of 2 different games at the same time, while also trying to talk. Which, if anything, that really just points out that I have no ground to stand on about complaining about any younger generation being ADHD when I multitask just as much, if not more, than most people. Which I don't actually complain about them being ADHD. In most scenarios. There are a couple of times where I'll meet people that can't maintain a conversation or are just constantly distracted. And I guess if somebody was right in front of me talking to me, I would put the phone down and pay attention to them. Let's go ahead and activate this. Tribute this. Get rid of this. Yeah, the effects here of like getting rid of cards from your opponent's graveyard doesn't seem like it really does anything. I think it's just you're playing cards to get into your graveyard, and you have to get fairly lucky to get enough cards into your graveyard to special summon the one card you're looking for out of the graveyard. Almost done with the daily quest on Destiny Child. Potentially am already done with Yu-Gi-Oh! Daily quest. But not anywhere close to being done as far as getting enough medals, so there's a lot of room to play more. I've never been able to really figure out a better system when I need to play something off screen other than to just play it off screen. And I would like a much better system there where I could potentially make extra content or in some way figure out something more to do. So many button taps. I'm still playing the goblin mining game that I can never remember the name of on my phone also, and I'm still playing Marvel Snap, which is still not really going anywhere. I'm getting a lot of cards, so I think I might be approaching the point where I get over the hill with Marvel Snap, and I may have somewhere close to 80% of all the cards. That being said, they are adding new cards so all the time, so it's not 100% certain that you'd ever get as far as you would like with that, as far as unlocking cards. There we go. That's it for the dailies for Destiny Child, which I'm not even showing. Yeah. Nintendo coming to Gamescom, it very likely isn't going to have an announcement for a Switch 2 or anything at Gamescom. That would be a weird thing. In fact, I don't know if Nintendo in the past 2 or 3 decades has announced any new hardware at even E3 when E3 was a big thing. Yeah, the days of Sony getting up on the stage at E3 and announcing PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, that was a long time ago. And Microsoft announcing new hardware would almost certainly not do that at the Game Awards. I guess that is a good question. Like, we are going to hit a point here where new consoles should start to be announced, and if you were to follow the Steam Deck movement, then it'll just be announced directly. A Nintendo Direct would almost certainly announce a new Nintendo Switch. That would be the one that would potentially happen at like the Game Awards. But a PlayStation or an Xbox, I could see Xbox maybe announcing a new hardware device at the Game Awards. That's what's going to really be the interesting twist. Is we've seen the Game Awards up until this point replace game announcements that would have been done at E3. But we have not seen an equivalent of hardware announcements. And so, yeah, it would be interesting to see if there is a step backwards in that direction, or if it isn't just going to be direct announcements. Always. I'm going to say no to activating that effect. Bobby Kotick also says, is quoted, "This is far from the final word. Activision Blizzard says it's confident in its appeal because the facts are on our side." Here we have Bobby Kotick, the one well-dressed person in the video gaming industry, and that's mostly, I think, because he sits on the board of a bunch of other companies, and he really is just a rich white guy, for lack of a better term. Gonna send this. See if this works in my favor. See how many traps he's gonna activate. I was listening to the Major Nelson Xbox podcast, and they brought on a lady who was in charge of the green initiatives that they're doing around Xbox. And she basically came from a political background, and so now she's been given it definitely felt like, and I can only like tinfoil hat speculate here, it feels like she was given a cushy job at Microsoft and is actually doing something at Microsoft, so it's not that cushy of a job, to, after probably pulling some strings politically in her previous life as a politician, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if what I often describe as corporate protectionism and the idea of this merger just keeping him in a job has very little to do with Microsoft or anybody at Microsoft liking Bobby Kotick, and has a lot more to do with the fact that he sits on the boards of a bunch of other highly powerful, politically influential companies, and that he has the ear of the right people. Yeah. Rich people are not just rich because they hoard money. They're rich because they hoard influence and power also. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if by keeping Bobby Kotick around, all of a sudden merger acquisitions in the future go a little bit smoother, or other actions that might have been stopped by the government or governments around the world don't get stopped by those governments. This is less news, but it's important to point out too. Octodad and the other Young Horses side games are now free on Steam. Young Horses has put out its original made version of Octodad free for all, along with other side games it made in between projects. Which, okay. Let's attack here. Destroy that. Activate this. Then attack here. And destroy that. And then end the turn. So the other titles are Snake Date, Ambassador, and Independent. So if we click on this, you can see his Octodad, which I will add to the library. I guess you do that way? Let's see what happens when I click here if I have to log in. Nope. That was easy enough. Octodad Student Edition is now in the library. And let's see. I guess I had already owned Octodad Deadliest Catch. So there was different versions. So that's somewhat deceptive, frankly, because it made it seem like you were getting a bunch more. The guy surrendered, and because he surrendered, I only got 50 gems. Independent is another game. And then Snake Date is another game. And then there should be one more. Ambassador is another game. Is there anything else that's free? No. So, open that in the new tab, open that in the new tab, open that in the new tab, and open that in the new tab, and we'll make YouTube shorts around all of that. The only other game they really have here is Octodad Deadliest Catch for $14.99, and then Bug Snacks for $24.99. You can actually get Octodad and Bug Snacks bundled for $31.98. And it looks like Bug Snacks, when it got that update, it got it as an actual update and not DLC, because I'm not seeing any DLC listed, although that may be inaccurate and the DLC may just be somewhere published by someone else. Okay. Just going to play Dark Hole. Destroy this character. Lego is hinting at more Donkey Kong, or directly telling you more Donkey Kong characters. They are still doing the real blockheads concept as far as the Lego Super Mario concept, where they're square blocky heads, and inevitably I assume this is just going to fit in with that other system. Why would I? Why would I need to special summon that guy? Can he not be regularly summoned? I'll just keep on doing things. Destroy a spell or trap field. Let's try this. Attack here. Do nothing. Can't activate this, so we'll just end the turn there. So yeah, still don't really feel like they are doing the right things with the Super Mario Brothers Lego sets, but you know, I could definitely be wrong too on that case. Let's go ahead and tribute this. And remove that from the graveyard. That is not what I meant to do. Dying Light is continuing to try to suck oxygen out of the room for Dead Island 2, which in all fairness, Dead Island 2 is getting praise that is very mediocre in the sense that it's just Dead Island with better graphics, and that there isn't that much of a big difference here, but they've actually named Dead Island 2 with this, she was a Dead Island 2 girl, he was a Dying Light 2 stay human boy. I think it was Skater Girl, Loser Boy was the song lyrics, which even that, the song's pretty old, and this image, I don't know where this image comes from as far as a meme. It's an old meme based on an old song, but yeah. Really, it's getting a little pathetic feeling, in the sense that Dead Island 2 is not really a threat to Dying Light 2. Neither of the games really are going to get amazingly well reviewed. So they probably should have just left things as they were. I'll just throw this in the graveyard. That was the wrong one to throw into the graveyard, obviously. Let's see. You still have until May 1st for the Steam Puzzle Fest to happen, which some of the Cyan creators of Myst games are 70% off, or up to 70% off. Yep. Although noticeably, like these Puzzle Fest event is really just not something that I've even seen because I don't go to the front page of Steam very often. Well, I don't know how I did it or why he did it, but he got rid of that annoying card. So I may be able to just very slowly here directly attack. Yeah, Science pointing out that their game Abduction from the creators of Myst is like the subtitle there, I guess, is 70% off. Then they have a mention of their new game Figment, which arguably I give too much free advertising to Cyan, but I do want to promote them. I feel like there should be more Myst-like games, either made by Cyan or other people out there. And then there was this person that was retweeted by Dying Light as far as custom Lego volatile. I assume this is like either a game mod or this is made in the real world as far as Lego minifigs that are zombies from Dying Light 2. I suspect, I guess, this is probably hand-painted statues in the real world. With just a lot of visual effects in the photography. Yeah, that looks like real-world miniatures. Undoubtedly, Lego would never say yes to anything like that. If Lego is going to do a zombie, it's going to be a cutesy zombie. In fact, there was a whole Lego, I think it was Burnside or Burnsville, that they were going to have this separate spooky collection of Lego sets, and it didn't sell well enough for them to continue with it. It also had like augmented reality built into it, so it was a very ambitious expansion, but like most Lego expansions, if it's not a licensed product, it just doesn't sell well enough, or they don't keep with it. And in all fairness, the Lego Friends concept makes a lot more sense to do, or even expanding the Lego City to have named characters and a cartoon around that makes a lot more sense than to have spooky Halloween type characters year round. But yeah, Lego's not going to do anything that is not at least somewhat kid friendly. And it's back. And then GameDeveloper.com says, just to point out another aspect to this whole merger being blocked by the CMA, that Activision Blizzard is off to a strong 2023 thanks to Modern Warfare 2. So, in a lot of ways, they have income to fund their war chest to fight these court battles. Let's see. And then I guess this should probably be our last game for today. There's not a lot of reason to continue to play. Trick here is going to be figuring out some way to win. We'll just see what happens here. We attack this, then we could activate this. Yeah, with a second attack, does it destroy this? No, it doesn't. So, tribute to monster then. And then target something in this graveyard. Nothing we can do here. Odd we have so many things on the field. So many great traps and can't do anything with it. So let's start going through the Video Games Chronicle articles. Warzone 2 server issues are actively being worked on following player complaints. Miyamoto dropped hints for future Nintendo movies. The VGC podcast doesn't matter. Xbox disabled Twitter feed. Some of this is old stuff. This is all old stuff. Star Wars Jedi Survivor requiring a download to play. Leaked images of the Lego Pac-Man set. There was a Slick Deals sale for one of the AT Legends arcades machines that put it at a pretty decent price. This is just the same spell 3 times, isn't it? No wonder I can't activate it. just actively trying to activate the cards. I got this AT Legends arcade thing a couple years ago, and I never got around to doing anything with it, so I probably should give it away at this point. But yeah, let's say no to activating anything. Let's just attack and win. Unless something stops us here. Oh yeah, this guy's not going to take any damage this turn. So no win. You can see about special summoning something. Let's go ahead and bring out that guy. Doing all this in main phase 2 doesn't make the most amount of sense. I lost my train of thought as far as whatever I was talking about before was. Going through the old news, Guerrilla Games co-studio director was promoted to the PlayStation Studios role. Cliff Bleszinski called on Nexion to bring back Lawbreakers, which doesn't seem like it's likely to happen. NetEase is reportedly suing Blizzard following the split between NetEase and Blizzard in China. Tekken revealed Lily, announced the Call of Duty board game. Apex Legends Season 17 release date trailer and new legend revealed. Alright, let's activate this and see if we can tribute this guy. That did nothing. And we really are just going backwards and forwards. These guys send that. There you go. So, I'm probably in a little bit better of a mood at now, an hour later, to start paying attention just to news. Yeah. And yeah, we have a small amount of time, really, to get at least to this point, which seems like you can do that pretty easily. 2 wins or a lot of losses, and then ideally to get to this point, which is going to take a lot more, and then if we could get all the way up here, that'd be great, but it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Does not seem likely. Now, as far as the special festival daily challenges, I still need to normal summon monsters 4 times and duel 7 more times. Which, the fact that this requirement is just 7 more times and yet the number of wins is way higher, either means that this requirement to duel 30 times is in no way connected to how much you're supposed to win, or I am just losing way more than I should be. Let's see, as far as daily quest, get most of these done, but normal summoning, ritual, synchro, and XYZ summoning, and normal summoning, and then pendulum fusion link summoning are all still requirements, as well as duel in solo mode, which all of that I guess we need to have done by Friday. Yep. So that's it for Yu-Gi-Oh! For today. So let's burn through the news now as fast as possible. Uh, Sony's Shuhei Yoshida saying AI will change the nature of learning for developers, which I don't know how it's really going to change the nature of learning in particular for developers. Apple won its appeals court ruling against the Epic Games. Then Dead Island 2 sold 1 million sales in 3 days. Cult of the Lamb, this is new news, has a huge free update adding post-game and revamped enemies and photo modes. I believe Cult of the Lamb is a rogue-like game, if I was to guess. It's one I've definitely heard of and recognized the name of, but I haven't paid any more attention than that to it. Let's see. UK's best-selling Star Wars games have been revealed. Box data shows the franchise is the UK's 6th biggest franchise behind Lego, GTA, and Mario. Which, you know what, this is an interesting point to make. As far as, since Video Games Chronicle is a UK-based website, they're going to give UK information. But this is video game franchises in the UK and their biggest sellers. Now, I will be charitable and say EA is a UK-based company. I don't think it really is. I would either lean towards EA actually being based out of the United States or it being in Europe. And there is a big difference post-Brexit between something that is in France or Germany in Europe somewhere and something being inherently in UK. But if you're going to be generous, FIFA, football, which is, or soccer as US people call it, super popular in every other country. Then you have Activision Blizzard with Call of Duty, which is a US company. Mario, which is a Japanese company. GTA, which, I mean, they may be like a New Zealand-based or Australian company, but let's just call it a U.S. country out of an abundance of caution. The Lego series, which in this case, I think they're mostly talking about TT Games, which would be Warner Brothers, which would be a U.S. company. Although you could say if Lego games in the future are sold and licensed to multiple game developers, then you would have to think of the Lego series as increasingly being more based out of Lego's home headquarters, which is in the middle of Europe. Although, in all fairness, it's really hard to even think of Lego as a European company more than it is just a Western world toy company in general. Star Wars is owned by Disney, so American-based company. Pokemon owned by a Japanese Pokemon company, partially owned by Nintendo. The Sims, again, is EA, FIFA. So if we were to generally say EA is a UK-based company, then sure. Number 1 and number 8. Assassin's Creed is Ubisoft, France, and then Need for Speed, I believe, is Microsoft. So if you're extremely generous in the top 10 here, 2 game franchises are in the top 10, are actually from UK-based companies, and you'd have to really be very generous there to even say that much. Otherwise, it's more realistic to say none of the top 10 franchises in UK are from UK-based companies. And inherently, I really don't think there are that many UK-based video game companies that are that big or impactful. The UK has just not been a good place to start a video game company. There's not a lot of people that live in the UK, so you're not going to get a lot of programmers. Comparative, they get paid relatively a lot, so it's not a case of starting a company, say, in India or China, where you could pay people cheaply, or even Japan, where you can overwork people and pay them relatively cheaply. So, yeah, there's just not a lot of incentives to make a video game company in the UK. When we look at the top 10 Star Wars games and how they break this out, they also confuse the issue, I think, somewhat, in that you have Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga as number 4, so it's technically both a Lego game and a Star Wars game. And Force Unleashed was LucasArts. Everything else, for the most part, is EA or Warner Brothers, or LucasArts and Ubisoft. So Battlefront of 2015, number 1 seller. Then Force Unleashed in 2008, something that's been effectively disavowed by Disney. And then Battlefront 2. Then the Lego people doing Lego games. Taking up 3 of the 10 spots. Yeah. Star Wars is still popular, although also Star Wars is getting very broad in what it is too, particularly in video games. Slapping Star Wars on a bunch of different games that play very differently. Let's see. EA has also called on players to not spoil Jedi Survivor as the street date is broken, which, Star Wars fans might actually listen to that call a little bit more. Somebody will inevitably do it, but whatever. This is a story I saw. Metacritic has pledged stricter moderation after, quote, abusive Horizon Forbidden West DLC review bombing. The DLC was seemingly review bombed over a plot point. So, what is the plot point? Will they spoil that for me? Which I don't know what the real plot point is. Let's see. At the ending of Burning Shores, players have the option to become romantic with a pivotal character introduced in the expansion, the female hero, Saika. Choosing this option will see the franchise protagonist Aloy kiss Saika. This plot point seemingly inspired many users to give the game a critical rating on the site, with many still live comments criticizing developer Grow's decision to add this romance option. Which, yeah, I think you definitely have a point here where people, a big percentage of whatever your fan base actually is, as far as Horizon Forbidden West and Horizon series, are loving to hate the game and loving to review the bomb it. And I think some of it definitely came from just how poorly they've handled the character of Aloy, and how they've retconned her and rewritten her visually. Was definitely a turning point with the main Forbidden West game, and that's where people started to get really upset, because it went from people really liking her, and I don't think there was any criticism in the first Horizon game, to them changing the way she looks, kind of changing how she acts, and now changing her romance / sexual orientation, seemingly out of the blue. There is arguably certainly a default thought that shouldn't be there, that every female who is just there for, in a video game, is just there for eye candy and is just a straight person by default. There might be plot points that were shown in previous points in the game that implied she was straight, and this lesbianism is coming out of the blue. Arguably, I'd say it's probably her being romantically interested in anyone is probably coming out of the blue, and that is weird too. It does feel like a bit of an overreaction, certainly, for them to just go, "Oh, she's a lesbian now." But I can also see, if you've played all of the main game of the first game and all of the main game of the second game, and you thought of her as one way and she acted one way, and then all of a sudden she just kisses somebody, that's a little bit weird. Not reasons to really review bomb things. I could also put on a tinfoil hat here and say this might be a false flag operation, straight up, where there's very few people that are actually upset, or that the people that are review bombing are actually trolls, and they're just acting upset just to troll, or it is a false flag and the makers of the DLC are review bombing themselves to create controversy, because that's basically the only time these games get press now. It's negative attention, but it's getting them some kind of attention. Now, I've also seen on Reddit when they were talking about this that apparently Metacritic is run by and owned by Fandom, and apparently, according to the comment I saw, Fandom has an entire business model around doing very little and having fans make the websites and do the reviews and everything like that on the website. Much like, I guess, Comic Vine is probably a lot like that too, or even the Giant Bomb wikis, where it's the fans that are putting in all the information and making these giant wikis, and the parent company that owns those sites are just running ads on every single page and making a lot of profit for doing very little work. But if Metacritic is like that, then this idea of stricter moderation probably isn't really going to happen. They said the same thing previously, based on another alleged review bomb. And then you have to get back to the point where this isn't really a review bomb at that point. Like, perhaps if one person is making multiple alternative accounts and putting multiple reviews, then that person is violating the rules. But that's not really a review bomb, in my mind. A review bomb is when there's something that is not in the game, not in the content of the game, that the game is being punished for. I.e., it's a game made by a Taiwanese company, and then a bunch of Chinese people are review bombing the game for no reason. And that's a made up example. There's a game that was somewhat like that, but there was even reason and content in that case for people to actually negatively review the game. There was also talk of Metacritic needing to have some kind of system to like confirm people's profiles and their achievements before letting them review a game, which is not a terrible thought, to have it pull like your Steam profile and see how many hours you've actually spent on the game, which is exactly what Steam does with its reviews. This tells you how long somebody's been playing a game. I think there is probably much better criticism around Horizon Forbidden West and its DLC, in the fact that it is probably just not that interesting of a game experience, in that this is what people are talking about instead. It was only a couple weeks ago that they were promoting an anti-deep water fear accessibility option, so that people who are afraid of diving deep into deep dark waters could dive, and the waters would be lit up to adjust for people with that, I think, somewhat rare phobia. Moving on, Netflix reveals The Witcher Season 3 teaser trailer and its June launch date. Henry Cavill's last season on the show will be split into 2 parts. Yes, when I first saw this did look like the Henry Cavill character still. And yeah, I just I don't know if too many people are gonna bother to even try and watch The Witcher season 3, knowing that the actor main protagonist is gonna be replaced. Uh, I don't know if the other characters in the Witcher series are that important of characters. Noticeably, like Yennefer would be the co-star of the series if they wanted her to be, and I haven't heard anybody say anything about that character in the series. And I maybe watched the first season and then completely lost interest myself, so I'm probably never going to get around to actually watching all of The Witcher at this point. Let's see. Here's a first look from Video Games Chronicles at Traveler Tales Founders Funko Pop mashup game. So, Traveler's Tales is what TT Games was used to be known as. Although at some point I do believe they just changed their name to TT Games. And not to be confused with Telltale Games. And so, Traveler's Tales founder, I guess at some point left, and now he has this mashup Funko Popped game. Now, there was a story about 6 months, or now it was probably about 3 months ago, where Funko Pop had so many extra Funko Pop characters that they were straight up throwing them away because they didn't want to pay for the warehousing of them. And I've never really liked the Funko Pop concept. This is where the Lego brick heads stole their ideas to have these big blocky heads. Funko Pops came first, but the idea of big iconic square heads doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. It has big eyes, kind of like anime, but then nothing else that really makes any sense. The heads don't bobble, I believe, which is weird. They're, I think, just soft vinyl things, and little minifigs that are frankly not tall enough to be action figures or big enough to be dolls, or if you were going to set it next to like a Japanese figurine, it's going to be oddly to scale for sure, but also a little short, so that they just don't look good on a shelf with anything. There's an odd emphasis on keeping them in boxes and displaying them in boxes, trying to imply that they would have some value when really it is just cheap plastic. Now, it looks like what they're trying to do with this crossover game is bring in some characters from other games. This is Elizabeth. Well, no, it's not Elizabeth, is it? I have no idea who this is. I'm not certain who this is, and I'm not certain who this is. This looks like the guy from... This says Battlestar Galactica. Oh, this is the Umbrella Academy. I can't read that. And this is the guy from The Thing, the movie The Thing. So, that's an odd combination of characters. And what are they doing in this game? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it plays a lot like a Lego game, but unlike a Lego game, you're not going to like break things apart and get Lego studs as a collectible. So it might very well be just a case where it's a player versus player first person shooter with Funko Pop things. Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, anything Universal Studios might have a license for. I think that's supposed to be Jurassic World. Battlestar Galactica is an odd inclusion, and Back to Back to the Future. And the Umbrella Academy. Like, mostly people aren't even going to recognize half of these scenes. This feels a lot like this is, let's take the idea of Lego Dimensions. There's Chucky. Um, and let's do Lego Dimensions without having to pay a license to Lego. And looking at these sections, it does definitely feel like it is taking a lot of the ideas of Lego games. One of the things that's weird, I would say, about the Lego DC Supervillains is that how that game in particular is very far away from what Lego games used to be. So there isn't a lot of running around, jumping, and punching things to break things for Lego studs. This Funko Pop game is going to be even more to that extreme, in which it doesn't seem like you're going to shoot or break anything. So the random ADHD gameplay style of a Lego game designed for really little kids is not likely to be in this game, I suspect, and instead this is going to be more for your tweenagers, your 12, 13, 14 year olds playing Funko Pop things. But then the references here, as far as Battlestar Galactica and the Umbrella Academy and the Thing, they don't match with that age limit either. That's closer to 25, 30 year olds. And so it feels like a kid's game. It feels like a game that's going to feel like a kid's game designed for 30-year-old people who are, I guess, in arrested development in the sense that they are collecting Funko Pop things, figurines. Which, yeah, I guess I can't really say anything because I collect Lego too myself. But and I have anime figures that I got really cheap on my shelf next to all my old anime DVDs, but I don't buy any more of those. And I would argue that the anime figurines at least have the characters looking like anime characters, which tends to make them look a little bit scantily clad and more mature in that aspect. Whereas, yeah, I would look down upon anybody that has Funko Pops on their shelves. I actively do look down on people that collect Funko Pops. It's just a terrible thing. Like, with the big heads in particular. If it wasn't the big heads, I could kind of see the idea, but then in modern times you would expect there to be them to either be really cheap and it be like a gotcha thing that you got for $1 or $2 in blind boxes, or really cheap collectibles that looked good on the shelf that had some kind of technology like NFC tags or something built into it. So I guess I'm somewhat anti-hyped on that Funko Pop game, although I would like to see how it plays a little bit more and see what it does compared to like the original Lego Star Wars games and Lego games in general. Let's see. Sega has revealed Samba de Amigos Party Central's first batch of songs, including music from Ariana Grande, Miley Cyrus, Carly Rae Jepsen, and the Jonas Brothers. Samba de Amigo Party Central is a rhythm action game. It's not DLC for Party Central, which kind of felt like it might have been just DLC for that. And it seems to be a Switch exclusive. Shigeru Miyamoto says the Mario movie has surpassed his expectations. Nintendo's creative fellow discusses the film's huge success ahead of its Japanese release. So yeah, Shigeru Miyamoto is very happy about it. At least he's publicly saying he's very happy about it, which definitely he's the person to please at Nintendo, I imagine, all around that. And so I suspect we'll see a Super Mario Bros. Movie 2 within the next 4 years. No reason not to just keep on going down that path. I saw a YouTuber compare like the Sonic movies to the Mario movies. I think it was the Angry Video Game Nerd making the comparison. And one thing he said, as I was barely paying attention, is that the Mario movie is full of Easter eggs and references to Super Mario Odyssey in particular in levels and characters, whereas the Sonic movie barely even makes a reference to the Sonic video games and takes place in the real world. Warzone 2 is adding a plunder mode on Wednesday. A new Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2 update has also been released. Check out this article on Video Games Chronicle if you're interested. Microsoft has reported its second best Q3 for Xbox revenue. An update: Microsoft's CEO Satya Nadella discusses the Xbox business during his company's earnings call. So, maybe they're going to be a little bit happier now. Although an earnings call is really just going to hype up everything. And I don't know, at Microsoft in particular, how much it's about making general shareholders happy versus making just the CEO and president happy versus making Bill Gates, who probably owns a lot of Microsoft, still happy. I guess you could check out this article to get more details on the earnings call. But certainly Video Games Chronicle is saying that this is a good quarter 3 for them. Xbox has kicked off a Starfield marketing with Lokozade promotion, which I guess that's some kind of drink. Special Starfield bottles will give consumers a chance to win Starfield and Xbox prizes. Is Starfield anywhere close to being released? Is it Lokozade is a UK and Ireland based drink? That's why I haven't heard of it. Let's see. September 6th is when Starfield is coming out, which it's surprising to see it actually ever have even a release date, because it definitely felt like it could be a game that would just forever be in development hell, and that still certainly could happen. So yeah, we're nearly half a year away from Starfield coming out, and decent chance though that Starfield will feel a lot more like Fallout 4 than it does Skyrim, or feels something like a weird mix between the two, or something completely different but still not really easy to get into. There is a logical fallacy potentially there that Bethesda can make a triangle of games in which one is a fantasy series game, fantasy magic series called Elder Scrolls, like Skyrim, and then one is a Fallout, diesel punk, atomic punk RPG called the Fallout series, and then there can be a third series in space that's going to be more of a hyper-realistic sci-fi series, traditional sci-fi, in the Starfield series. And I'm just not sure ZeniMax or Bethesda can make those games and all of them succeed, or that there's enough desire for 3 different types of games. On top of which, we have to also admit that Bethesda's never really been great about making good games. Games that weren't buggy, games that told a particularly interesting story. Standards have gone up quite a bit since Skyrim originally was released, and if a Skyrim today was released, it almost certainly would fail. Let's see. Moving on, May's PlayStation Plus Essential games have leaked, and then update to Sony has officially announced the PlayStation Plus Essential titles, which, okay. Sackboy, Meet Your Maker, and Tales of Iron. Then we already have talked about this a lot, and it's going to be a long time before we get a real concrete finale to this merger acquisition attempt. This is just another small detail, but yeah, the UK regulator blocked the acquisition, and Microsoft says it will appeal. That's pretty much all you need to know. There's nothing more to that can be done. If anything, if you were in the UK and you were against the merger, it would have been too late to put out any kind of comment to be against it, or if you were for the merger, it's too late at this point to be for it and put out any comments. Now, at some point, you might be a friend of the court if you were going to be part of Microsoft's appeal, but you'd also probably have to be either very rich or a corporation to be a friend of the court and put out a comment via that process. And then we already talked about this and this. Let's see. Control's lead designer establishes a new NetEase game studio called Anchor Point. Its offices are in Spain and the US, and it will develop an action-adventure games for PC and console. Now, NetEase is the Chinese company that's suing Bethesda, Activision Blizzard, not Bethesda. So, NetEase being the parent company as a Chinese company of this new company called Anchor Point might be somewhat of a rocky relationship, or it might just be perfectly fine. And then I also would have to question the lead designer starting a new company instead of the lead director or developer. The visuals of Control in some places were very interesting to look at, but for the most part I found the control building and what you looked at in Control to be very repetitive and fairly dull and a lot of darkness. This visual image, for instance, is not really shown in the game Control. And if anything, I would say Control in general was just a very overhyped game that in actual practical playing was good but not great. Like, I don't see a lot of people going back and talking about it nowadays, and that's one of the things that is a big problem with any major AAA game release that people are hyped around, is if it really is going to stand the test of time, people would come back and talk about it some more. And I would definitely say it is more relevant now to go back and play The Witcher 3 a second time than it would be to play Control a second time. And then we kind of talked about this. LEGO teased plans to release a range of Donkey Kong sets with that Twitter thing. They have this podcast reaction where I looked at that. Sony confirming the PlayStation Plus Essential games, which we just talked about that. And then the analyst. So I opened half of those articles the second time just so I talk about them at the first of the stream. And then Activision Blizzard posts a strong Q1 results as the net income jumps 87%. The publisher also forecasts further growth, citing strong Diablo 4 pre-sales. So yeah, if anything, there really isn't a ticking clock to say that Activision Blizzard has to be acquired in the next year or so. They don't have like a drop dead date or anything like that, so they can just work towards this goal for many years. I guess at a certain point, the 10-year contract being signed now, if it takes them 10 years to get the merger to go, they could then, after that point, make the games exclusive, although I still don't think that's Microsoft's goal at all. Although, if we wanted to float a conspiracy theory again, put the tinfoil hat back on, I do suspect Major Nelson, Larry, I forget his last name, but Major Nelson is what he usually goes by as a gamer tag. I suspect he's getting kind of old and potentially looking to either be promoted in Microsoft to a board level position or just retire in general. So if Major Nelson in particular was the face of making the promises that we would never make games exclusive, and then they did acquire Activision Blizzard, and then he did a double face and made the games exclusive, that wouldn't be too bad of a plan, frankly, to say, well, I'm going to do this thing that's highly unpopular and take all the blame for it, and then I'll leave and retire, so I'll take all the blame with me. Or he sees the merger through, then retires, then somebody new comes in, and then they make the games exclusive, and then they could say, well, that was all Major Nelson that said that the games wouldn't be exclusive. I'm the new guy that's in charge, and I have different plans. So yeah, that might be a tinfoil conspiracy thought too, is that Major Nelson is potentially going to retire in the next 10 years, and then it will be in the lap of somebody else to decide whether games are exclusive or not. Although, I think games slowly succeeding and becoming 100% digital are way bigger of a deal than whether games are going to be exclusive or not. Alright, now we're at the Gematsu articles. Dead Island 2 sells 1 million in the first 3 days. There's a video here showing a wide variety of zombies all getting grabbed by the neck in the exact same animation over and over again, which when you see it back to back, it's not particularly a great visual. And I don't know why you would specifically be grabbing zombies by the neck in the first place, instead of either punching them, kicking them, or swinging a weapon at them. Let's see. Mary Skelter Finale is coming to PC this fall. It includes all downloadable content embedded in game. I don't know if Finale is a merger of previous Mary Skelter games, or if it is yeah, there's Mary Skelter Nightmares, Mary Skelter 2, and concludes with Mary Skelter Finale. So there's 2 other Mary Skelter games, I assume already on Steam. And we have a really general idea of what kind of game it is. Looks half visual novel, half dungeon crawler. Nice visuals, somewhat. Almost feels like this is a Persona game if you wanted more moe characters and more pink visuals. Turn-based RPG. And I would suspect that there's probably a little bit more adult content emphasis. You see a lot of skin here compared to, say, the Persona series. If anything, I feel like if we were to see if the other 2 games are here. Let's open that in a new window. Yeah, I vaguely recall, I think that Mary Skelter 1 or 2 had some small bit of censorship that people were unhappy with. Let's see if we can find them. You can definitely see the Idea Factory is very much into moe anime, very anime type games. And I own quite a few of them, considering I haven't played any of them. I really am getting down to the point where it's just like ridiculous to buy any new games at all. Like, I've collected quite a bit. Too much of a backlog. Well, the good news on that certainly also is that there is just not that many. There's a ton of DLC for all their games. See if maybe Compile Heart has them listed. You know what? I should just type in the thing and try that. Let's see. Mary Skelter. Yep, we've got pop up here. Mary Skelter. This of Nightmares. It's just bringing up this. Yeah. Well, color me confused. Because even though that brought up the name, so it knows the name of the series. It seems. Let's see if there's. Seems the game is just like totally missing. Unless it's a language thing. Now I'm not filtering by anything else. Get rid of the developer compile heart. There we go. So Nightmares is here and 2 is here. Okay. So the first game, Nightmares, came out in 2018 from Idea Factory and was published by Ghostlight Ltd. So you'd have this dungeon crawler game, RPG game, that is on my wish list. So you'd want to burn through that. Then you would want to potentially burn through the second game, which just came out in 2022 on PC, at least. And then you potentially would want to move towards this one. And some nudity, sexual content, general mature content in the first game. But doesn't seem like that created any real controversy. It's not reviewed negatively or anything around that. And then this 2 is still reviewed fairly positively. If anything, Finale seems like it's getting a little bit it's getting a little bit more risque in Finale. Here we can see the cut content, censored / content, the purge corruption minigame was removed. A dev patch link is below to patch it back in. I can't help but think that this is also the Criminal Girls series, or inspired by the Criminal Girls series, because definitely some of these characters look like, yeah, that, I guess. Let's see if we could search that. And criminal Girls invite only is what I'm thinking about here. And then again, get rid of the developer tag. This is made by NIS, though, not the same company. So somebody stole the idea or similar ideas. I guess the Criminal Girls here do look fairly different than what I was thinking of. But there are definitely some characters in Finale that do have those Japanese criminal stripes, like this character here. But the art style is completely different. Come to look at it. Yeah. Okay, well, Mary Skelter Finale will be put on the fall list, and then we can just leave it at that. There's nothing else really to say at the moment. Yet another game coming to Steam. We'll have to wait and see if it gets censored or if it self-censors. Moving on, Master Detective Archives Raincode details episodes, subquests, and puzzle-solving elements. Check this article out if you want to get more details, although honestly I just am at the point where I want to see this game potentially come out and be reviewed. That there's a high danger that the game will be very interesting visually and then play pretty poorly. That is fairly typical in Japanese games in the past. At least it's been very typical. But if it plays well and sells well and is well received, then it could be the beginning of a new series. And we're always looking for new series to potentially do something different or tell a different kind of story with different characters. Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters is coming to the Switch on August 10th in Japan. It's already, I believe, available on Steam. So there isn't even really a link here to click on the Steam one. There is still somewhat of a question as far as whether the Sisters vs. Sisters series is yet another soft reboot of the Neptunia series, and whether it's the series that you should start with or follow going forward. Honkai Star Rail has an Interstellar Journey launch trailer, according to Gametsu, if you want to look at that. Again, this is probably an example of a 2D animated opening that looks nothing like the 3D graphics of the actual game. Magical Drop 6 Forever has a limited physical edition being announced for the Switch. Looks like there's a lot of little gadgets and collectibles here for what I believe is just a match 3 game. Is this all like 72 cards from the tarot? No. Looks like you're getting maybe 5 or 6 cards. 12 collectible cards inspired by the tarot cards, so I think 13 would be the major arcana. So they're probably missing death or something like that. Which in all fairness, just the major arcana of the tarot card tends to be the place where all the actual good visuals are made, and the suits cards are fairly generic. Moving on, RPG Maker Unite is launching April 27th, priced at $999. So you literally pay $100 to get RPG Maker Unite, or more likely, I suspect a lot of asset flippers are pirating the RPG Maker series and then making games and then paying $100, possibly even with stolen credit cards, to list their games on Steam. Like, I don't know how deep the well goes, but if I were a Russian asset flipper making troll games, that's exactly what I'd do. Is I'd pirate all the software used to make the games. I'd spend almost no energy whatsoever making the games. I would trick people with stolen credit cards and things like that to get money to pay the $100 licensing listing fee on Steam Direct, and then I would hope, having put in close to $0, that I would make more than $0 in profit by listing the game. Inherently, it's probably a great thing that Steam does not give people credit in the sense that you could say, withhold my earnings until I make $100 and then take that $100 as the listing fee for the game, because then anybody could potentially list any game, and if it doesn't make $100, oh well, and if it does, there's no investment there. Now, arguably, when they introduced the listing fee, a lot of people said it was way too low at $100, and Valve argued very much that it doesn't matter what the price is. Honestly, I think it does matter what the price is, though, because if the listing fee was closer to $899, you would get a considerably smaller number of people willing to risk that kind of money on an asset flip garbage game. And $8.99 is not that huge of a number that it would stop anybody who actually plans on succeeding as a game publisher, as a game developer, nor is it small enough that it doesn't act as a deterrent like $100 is. $8.99 is a lot, certainly if you're some poor Brazilian game developer that wants to self-publish. Yes, but it's that's always going to be the problem, is that there's going to be this disparagement between poor people in Brazil who have maybe $10 to their name and people in richer countries who can throw away $100 like it's nothing. And I just pick $8.99 out of the hat because if you think about the most expensive console, if you're getting an Xbox Series X, by the time you get controllers and a couple of games, you probably are at $600-700 at that point. So $8.99 really is above what would feel like a lot of money for most people, and most gamers in particular. And it's not $1,000. You could set it at $1,000. You could set it at $10,000. Really, any real company is expecting to make at least $10,000 in profit. Otherwise, it's not a real company, basically. If you look at like taxes and income, you would expect any video game company, even if it's a small independent person, to make somewhere around $40,000 to $100,000 plus in annual income. And if you're not planning on making $40,000 to $100,000 plus in annual income, then you probably shouldn't be putting your game on Steam. There are a lot of free games that get put out as student projects, and I guess that is something that's nice around the Steam Direct aspect, but I could also see Valve just having an amnesty program where you submit your game as a free game and you don't have to pay that fee. And certainly they could say, if you've published any other game and made profit on Steam, then you can publish games for free without paying the Steam Direct fee too. That would work very well. Most people aren't going to want to play a free game unless it's from a publisher or a game developer who has released something else that was higher quality that you probably did charge for. The Steam Direct being at $100 also pushes towards microtransactions and free-to-play concepts, which those kinds of games really have not been embraced by PC gamers, and there really aren't that many of them on Steam. Moving on, though, a game called War Mongrels for the PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, and Xbox One is now available. It's a real-time strategy game that was previously released on PC. So, let's see what the reception is on PC. Looks like an XCOM style game. That being said, you can see it's at like 68% positively. So there's a lot of these XCOM style games, and one that's poorly reviewed. Doesn't deserve my attention. A game called Ghostpia Season 1 for Switch launches May 23rd in the West. Seems like a weird animation style. Looks kind of like a visual novel. I don't know if it really is. It really feels like a visual novel and nothing else. One of the things I guess I could say is that it would be very easy to defend the Horizon Forbidden West DLC if the entire DLC was working towards a relationship, a closeness between the two female characters in question. If you had played the entire DLC and it's like, oh, you work together, you grow together, you develop a closeness, it's all a very natural, well-told storyline experience. The idea of a kiss at the end would probably feel fairly natural. But if it's just sprung up the instant you're given, the player is given a choice to say yes romance or no romance, I mean, that's really no surprise. And even in Mass Effect, that was a big problem, and usually that is a big problem when they throw in these romance aspects as an afterthought in games, is that it is the player's given a choice and then 5 seconds later they're kissing, they're making out, they're having sex, which that's just not the natural progression. And when you get into more of the visual novel dating aspects, yes, there may be a little bit of romance and puppy love at the beginning of those visual novel dating experiences, but you have to nurture those relationships and grow the relationships to get to the actual kissing or further content. Even in Honey Pop, which is a match 3 adult game, sex game, you don't start in Honey Pop with just immediately having sex with the people you're dating. You have to take them on 2 or 3 dates. You have to talk to them a lot. You have to ply them with gifts, bribe them with gifts, and the relationships develop somewhat naturally. It's accelerated for sure because it is a kid's, not a kid's game. Honey Pop is not a kid's game. It's an adult game. Because it's an adult's game, the romance and the relationship building is somewhat accelerated, but yeah, it still feels very natural. And inherently, regular game developers don't know how to write, or the writers in general just don't know how to make a they just don't know how to make romantic stories. That's just not the stories they ever write. It's always running and gunning and shooting, and romance is always never a thing. It's kind of the same problem with like comic books, is that there's basically no comic books that aren't superheroes fighting other supervillains, and there's no real romance, there's no real relationships in most comic books. It's very flat in one note, and kind of hard to relate to in a lot of cases, and kind of hard to feel relatable in general. Moving on, we already talked about the Funko Fusion. I guess that's a decent name for what is effectively looks like it's going to be just Lego Dimensions without the Legos. It would be really weird if you actually did have to like scan the barcode on the back of Funko Pop boxes to get certain characters, or take a picture of the Funko Pops to add them to the game. Like NFC in particular is really not necessary. We could easily have barcode scanners or just vision detection to determine whether somebody has bought the actual physical toy, or at least gotten access to the physical toy. Moving on, Irem Collection Volume 1 has been announced for the PS4 and PS5 and the Xbox Series and Xbox One and Switch. This is the first entry in a 5-volume series of classic Irem titles. I have no idea what Irem is, but I would assume it's a shoot 'em up game series. Yep. That's what it looks like. It looks very old school. Like, and it definitely is just one of those series that may have a lot more relevancy in Japan than in the West, and may very well have never come out to the West, or may have just been in arcades, in a few limited arcades in the West. Samba de Amigo Party Central, first batch of songs announced. There's a longer list in this picture of the people, and a longer typed out list here of the actual songs, if you're interested, on Gamatsu. Let's see, a game called Star Trek Resurgence is launching May 23rd. It's an interactive narrative game set shortly after Star Trek The Next Generation. It's going to be an Epic Games Store exclusive, and then be on the PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, and Xbox One. Yeah, there might be something to this, but I suspect this is going to come off very much like a Telltale game and be fairly short and not really much of an experience. If anything, it may be actually pathetically terrible in the visuals, in that there's maybe not going to be any movement at all, and it's just still 3D images, or it's going to be very limited, poorly animated movement in very limited locations. There is a danger certainly here that this does not stand up to the level of quality that Star Trek deserves. And there is also the big question as to what the heck is Star Trek at this point, since it's had so many remakes and continuations and different things. Like, you'd have to be familiar with the Picard series, the Upper Deck series, and several Star Trek reboot movies, and several other Star Trek reboot series to even begin to understand what Star Trek has been in the past 10 years, let alone what this is supposed to be, unless it's just throwing all that away and just trying to tell you a story that is very similar to Star Trek The Next Generation, which then you have to kind of think about what even is the Star Trek Next Generation universe like. Yep. Honestly, there should have been a more consistent number of releases of Star Trek games ever since Star Trek Next Generation became successful, to make a through line of what the Star Trek universe in video games was. And in the same way, there should have been a consistent follow through as far as what Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek in general was. Whereas the Next Generation movies are very different from the TV series, and then you have Enterprise and Voyager and Deep Space Nine as all very, very different things. So even before the most recent reboot of Star Trek, there was a lot of confusion around what Star Trek should be. Remnant 2, The World of Losum Duran trailer is available according to Komatsu if you want to check that out. An arcade-style 3D shoot-'em-up game called Azura the Striker has been announced for PC. I feel like Azura the Striker is a title I've heard before, but Azura the Striker may be based off of like a Japanese or Chinese myth too. This is a 3D perspective shooter game. That's potentially interesting. Instead of it just being a generic shoot 'em up, and you're shooting vampire dragons instead of ships, it looks like. Well, there's a game that this is like, but I forget the name of it. on the animation here, I say it does look a little rough, but you'd be looking at the back of this character in actual gameplay, so she's not actually going to look like that drawing anyways. You're mostly just seeing this, I suspect. Yeah, mostly just seeing her butt. And then the dragons are going to be in movement in the distance as far as the enemies in the background. So you're not going to get a clean shot of the face of the dragon either. This could be a somewhat low budget game. Let's see. Trinity Trigger Western Launch interview with Takumi Isobe, Yora Kubota, and Hiroki Kikuta. Apparently Gematsu has an actual interview here if you want to check this out. Talking about what game? Trinity Trigger? Oh. Very rare for Gematsu to have an interview at all. They probably should get more interviews though, but I wouldn't ever have time to read them. Cry Machina has been delayed to July 27th or in Japan, or Cry Machina. Let's see. Trice has detailed students' lives, doppels, and the new system, plus a newly drawn illustration by the character designer Taiga Sajo. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. This looks like this is an RPG game similar to Persona, but more flat 2D about it style. This was the one that had this weird screenshot where this girl has this like full face mask, and then there's two tubes connecting to one tube as far as a full face mask, which I really question why. I don't think that ever actually happens in medical terminology. Most face masks, the exhale, the CO2, just goes out through one-way valves, which would be what you would assume this green dot is on the face mask. So it's not that. So then the idea would be that there would be some kind of like oxygen and then some other substance both being put in the face mask for this lady, and there's just no reason that they would mix like that and so close to the face anyways. Maybe in Japanese medical visuals, though, it makes more sense, or Japanese medicine, it makes more sense. But the fact that that one scene that's really just supposed to evoke this poor girl is the one scene I remember doesn't sell the game particularly interesting by that much. It does just kind of feel like a lower budget Persona game, dungeon crawler type experience. And it might be good when it comes out, but the fact that it's being delayed, that's what they were talking about, also implies that even they know it needs more work to be good. Well, no, it's not being delayed. It's just being teased more, and the teasing as far as doppels and new systems still is not catching my attention. The game Flashback 2 launches in November with a new gameplay trailer being released. I don't understand why Flashback 2. Like, I guess this is a sequel potentially to the remake of Flashback. Let's see. Like, this is the original Flashback game. And I already own it, and this was released on PC in 2018, but fairly obviously it is not the game that actually came out in 2018. Maybe I'm just confusing this with Another World. Which was, I think, made by the same artist. And there's another series, another game that Another World, I think, may be a sequel to. It's just... So this is a potential I guess, continuation of the series, the flashback series. But you can pretty well tell that they're having to hold back quite a bit to try and make the game feel like a flashback game. I feel like there was another flashback game that was like an Xbox Live exclusive that didn't sell very well. Also, we're getting a lot of announcements for games without release dates. Also, which probably means that we're going to hit a point very quickly here where we're not going to see any more announcements for anything coming out in 2023, and now it's just going to be a long waiting game to see who actually releases their games that have already been announced. A game called Pictionteer is coming to the Switch on June 29th. It's a slow life RPG currently available on PC. Which, yeah, looks like a Stardew Valley type experience. It's on the following list, but I couldn't actually make a decision here as far as whether I'd want this to be a game I'd actually want to play. Feels a little bit more like a Zelda game than just a farming game, and for that reason I think I will put it on the wish list. Whereas Stardew Valley was too much of a farming game, and theoretically there was a romance section in Stardew Valley too, but I don't think I really engaged with that enough. A game called Shinobi Non Grata for PC launches May 25th. The PS4 and Switch versions are due out at a later date. So, I'm wondering if maybe I should turn the blur off the videos too. It would be kind of a shame to have it turn off, but because then I get more content ID claims, and it's not like I've really ever come over to these videos and hit play and try to get them to play. I don't think I can get them to play. I've manipulated them enough that they won't play anyway, so the first couple of videos just turn into a couple blurry screenshots instead. A strategy RPG called Great Ambitions of the Slimes has been announced for PC, which almost certainly this is a game I wouldn't put on my follow list. Yeah, these strategy RPGs are just not something I'm very interested in playing. So I'm not going to put that on the follow list. Also, it's a coming soon game, so whatever. Doesn't look particularly great either. Bancho Tactics launches in August. It's a strategy turn-based RPG set in a Japanese gangster high school, which at the very least that's a different kind of story, so that interests me a little bit more. But I still would probably say no to this in favor of something like River City Girls as a beat 'em up game. World Championship Boxing Manager for the PS4 and Xbox One and Switch launches May 17th. It's already on Steam. Let's see what the reviews are on that. Mixed reviews. Which, yeah, that's a shame. The graphics look kind of nice, but I think the fact that it is just a simulation game is kind of a problem there, in part. I'm going to put it on the follow list. It very well may have already been on the follow list and left the follow list. Let's see. We already talked about the Blizzard merger being stopped or blocked. We already talked about NetEase Games establishing a new company. I guess it is fair to say they are at least doing it fairly decently here in that you have 3 founders in a professional photo looking fairly professional. Now, this guy potentially didn't get the message as much as the other two, in that he does not have a jacket on and he's wearing jeans. He's actually wearing nice shoes, and he's wearing nice shoes where she's wearing more sneakers. And these slacks are more like jean slacks, I would say. No ties on the guys, no tie or anything there. So it's a dressed down look on all of them, but it looks way more professional than most pictures we see. Now the professional photograph, having 3 people sit on a cube, is a little bit personal for professional things. The smiling and the odd positioning definitely feels like this is a group of friends getting their class portrait taken together, more than a group of professionals. Whereas professional, they should just be standing and should just be like a bust top half look of it. Arguably, if you did crop this down to just this part, it would be a lot better than a massive amount of just empty space all around here. In fact, there's so much empty space that if you told me there was originally somebody else here that has been edited out, or somebody else around this area that has been edited out, I'd almost believe you. Or if these were 3 different photos composited together, I'd believe that also. Anyways, let's move on. Achilles Legends Untold is coming to the PS4 and PS5 and the Xbox Series and Xbox One in Q3 of 2023. It's currently in early access on PC via Steam and the Epic Games Store. I still am 100% into Steam as a PC gamer. Like, I have no interest at all in going to Epic Games Store or any other storefront, or promoting any other game store or games via any other storefront. I have about 6 more Gamatsu articles. Let's see, Grey Hill Incident Alien Day trailer is available if you want to look at that. This looks like a troll kind of asset flip game, but it's getting promoted more like a real game. Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtue List characters trailer is available if you want to check that out. Dinosaur Ranch Simulator game Paleo Pines launches this fall for the PS4 and PS5, Xbox Series, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. I suppose it was a possibility that I would have not been able to stream today. I didn't even mention that, but it was raining pretty hard for about an hour. Although, odds are I wouldn't have been able to stream today, more likely because I was messing with the Wi-Fi and the internet in general. This Paleo Pines does look like it might be an interesting little kids game, and the idea of going on adventures and hanging out with your dinosaur friends is kind of the thing that should have a cartoon around it, and we just don't have anything like that. Yeah, if I was the owner of Jurassic Park, I definitely would have made a Jurassic Park Kids series where the dinosaurs are friendly always, and the kids go on adventures with the dinosaurs. Let's move on. Charade Maniacs for the Switch launches June 27th in the West. I assume this is a visual novel. Don't have anything else here. Looks like it's probably a otome visual novel, young maiden visual novel. A romance visual novel called Shirogane X Spirits is coming to the PS4 and Switch on August 24th in Japan. It's currently available for the PS Vita. It's been a long time since we've seen a game available for the Vita and PC. But we really are at the point still where Vita games are getting ported to the Switch and getting re-released, or they're getting released to Steam. Although maybe not Steam in this case. This is probably more of a romance rom-com visual. Yeah, it says romance visual novel. It says it's on PC. But they're not putting any link to where on PC it's listed. It was listed on PC in 2015. Cassette Beasts for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Switch launches on May 25th, and it's out today for PC. Cassette Beasts is an idea of having Pokemon-like characters that can record and copy and merge together. So, unlike Pokemon, I don't think the characters stay consistent, and I think that because of that, there is actually a fairly large amount of variety between the characters, but a very small number of core monster characters, because it is just doing this whole fusion concept like that. Which at some level, the evolution concept in Pokemon also started with a smaller number of core characters, and then they evolved into new versions. This game is 97% positive, but it has only 34 reviews. It is also, however, only out today. Only just now out today. When I clicked on that link, it took me somewhere else, further ahead in the tabs. PlayStation Plus monthly games lineup. We talked about that, I think, well enough at least. A romance visual novel, Hatsukoi Senkame, is coming to the Switch on June 29th in Japan. It's currently available on PC. Here you have a moe art style and a two-piece bikini swimsuit on a character that is particularly short looking, so I have to assume, compared to the much taller looking character here, that she is actually fairly young, considering the other art styles, or at least physically she appears to be that young. Storyline wise, who knows, she may be a 1,000-year-old vampire. What does it really matter in the end? It's all fiction. Again, this is a game that's listed on PC but doesn't have a link to where to buy it on PC, which makes me assume that you have to get it on something like Duel site, and it didn't either try at all or didn't get onto Steam. So this might be an aspect, certainly, of a couple games we've seen probably from the same publisher that either didn't even try to get it on Steam but are somehow getting it on the Switch, because Steam may be more censorious than Switch is, or it may be that they just didn't try for another reason. There's no publisher listed here. That would be information that would be very helpful. Yet, I'm not seeing that. Moving on, Microids has announced a Totally Spies game for consoles and PCs. Sam, Clover, and Alex are back. This looks similar to the animation style of the original Totally Spies cartoon. I have to severely question, though, if Totally Spies is popular at the moment, because that sounds fairly crazy, like it would if it was popular. and I just hadn't heard about it. And certainly I would say Totally Spies was targeted more towards girls than little boys, so it was not a series that I would have been the right age to watch or the right gender to particularly watch. Yeah. It would be interesting if this comes back and succeeds fairly well, because there are plenty of other cartoons that could come back and have video games made around them also. Alright, now let's do some flawless cleanup. A game called Elemental Riders. 72% early access since January. I'll give that more time. Elemates. I'm going to give this a little bit more time. I'm going to end up saying that too much for the faultless cleanup though, I think. Electrosoul. I think we could probably say no on this, though. Just remove that. There's just not ever going to be enough reviews for it to be relevant. And it's all the same background in every screenshot, so it's just going to be too simplistic of a puzzle game. Electrician Simulator. Is this still in early access? No. So it is out. If anything, this is something that I think I'd be very interested in potentially playing, although I bet it's fairly limited in the electronics that you actually work on and how you actually fix things. And honestly, I question whether an electrician would be the one fixing plugs on lamps and also fixing PlayStation controllers. Well, an electrician could probably do both of that. There's usually more skilled electricians that are in the field of microcircuitry than there are basic residential or even business wiring electricians that are more just about wiring power plugs and high voltage. High voltage and low voltage is what they would really separate a lot between in digital signals versus just a AC voltage. But yeah, I think I'd love to have this game. And frankly, this could be incredibly educational for kids that might want to go into electronics. I will say that all the electronics we're seeing here is very much European style electronics or UK style electronics, so it's not going to really, nothing that you're doing as far as the residential wiring there is going to be particularly accurate to the 120 United States wiring or many other countries 240's wiring standards. Arguably the UK's electrical 240 wiring standards and their plugs might be some of the best out there, but they just really have a hard time promoting it, and size is often king as far as, and the UK plugs or outlets are very big. But yeah, kids in particular who want to be electricians are going to end up taking apart a lot of stuff and breaking a lot of stuff because of that. And so it makes a great amount of sense for them to do that digitally instead of taking things apart. I have a nephew who has told me 2 or 3 times that he doesn't care if he gets electrocuted every time I tell him, you can't, that doesn't work right now, it's broken because I've wired it the wrong way. And he goes, oh, I don't care if I get electrocuted, because he doesn't realize that putting 120 volts through his small body would almost certainly kill him, if not hurt severely. Which, that is definitely the danger. I actually thought of an interesting tabletop board game to teach kids residential electrical wiring, but making a board game like that is frankly fairly dangerous to even inspire kids to do that, because they'll try to do it in the real world, and then they'll end up getting electrocuted. For sure. Alright, this other game, Elderand, I've been shocked at least 3 or 4 times on 120/40 voltage, and I did that when I was much older and bigger, so it managed not to kill me, but it easily could have killed me. And most people who work in electronics do get shocked when they're learning electronics, at least once. With 120, 240 can be even more dangerous, although not as dangerous as you might think. Moving on, supposed to be talking about video games. This Elden Gunfire 2 is mixed reviewed, so that can leave the fall list. Egression means escaping, so it's a escape the room puzzle game. It doesn't look terrible, and it's positive, but it requires VR headsets. Should I keep this as a VR game? Yeah, I'll keep it still. There's the small possibility, I guess, that VR might get big enough or cheap enough that everybody ends up getting a VR headset, but it's unlikely. I wouldn't be surprised if there's just no talk whatsoever as far as VR with the next launch of consoles. EFO Escape from Outer World. I just closed a tab that I should have declicked the fall list on first, but whatever. This EFO doesn't look like it has enough. Even though it is mostly positive, at 70% that's still fairly low. It's a free game. And then this game, I guess I'll give it a little bit more time, but I probably could just say no anyways. And then Eduardo is an easy no, so we'll get rid of that. Then our GameDeveloper.com. Microsoft praises Xbox Game Pass as quarterly subscription revenues near $1 billion. $1 billion every fourth of a year, so $4 billion annually, potentially. Which, yeah, that's a lot of money. Xbox Game Pass working out fairly well for Microsoft. That being said, even in this screenshot, you have to point out that they really aren't promoting a lot of games here when you have Sea of Thieves here, Sea of Thieves here, Sea of Thieves here. Just copied it over and over again. And so it's seemingly just 3 rows of icons that were copied over and over again and not shifted in any way to make a pattern that would be a little bit more difficult or shuffled. Are there any other games on these 3 rows that are also duplicated amongst, I guess it's 4 rows maybe? No, these all seem to be fairly different games. Some of them are Ubisoft games, some of them are EA games. All of them seem to be fairly popular, recognizable games. Like here you have Prey, you can barely even make that out, or here's Doom. I couldn't tell you what that is. Oh, wait a minute. This icon looks exactly the same as this icon. So that's weird. And then this icon is next to this icon, but then it's next to this icon. So it does feel like they had a small collection here, but they shuffled it in very weird ways. So this is randomized. They just did a very bad random pass. And it does certainly jump out as far as the Sea of Thieves icon, that if they had originally not had just one Sea of Thieves here and gotten rid of this and gotten rid of this, I wouldn't have realized how many other things are getting copied and pasted. Which bad marketing because there undoubtedly are a lot more Xbox Game Pass games that are going to always be on Xbox Game Pass, and you could have used as a promotion, or you could have made the games even just like a fourth as big and made them much more visible because they really are too small to see anyways. It's just a bad design overall. And when you think of Xbox Game Pass, I'm not really thinking of like a Surface touchscreen device or a keyboard. Like this touchscreen, compared to the size of this keyboard, if they're supposed to be in scale, is huge. Or headphones or mouse, or playing on your phone or a tablet. I'm still thinking playing on a console, playing on a controller. Even if I'm playing through a PC, I'm thinking playing on a controller still. Then we've already talked about the UK regulator blocking the merger, the Activision Blizzard Microsoft merger. Here's a much better example of showing off specific games. And it's probably the exact same games, really. It's just, yeah, some are big, some are small. They've all got a tilt to them. But, yeah. Arguably, it's nothing but blackness in the background, so you could have done something a little bit more around that. And I guess the question is, does Microsoft want to promote itself with a black background theme these days, or a white background theme? Seems like they might be going more in the light white theme more than anything. Let's see. And then Microsoft Activision Blizzard slammed the UK regulator for blocking the $68.7 billion merger. Which I guess that makes some small perspective as far as how many quarters would you have to go. 68 quarters. 4 quarters in a year, so you're talking 17 years to make up $68 billion. 17 years worth of potential Xbox Game Pass sales, total like gross revenue for this merger. So yeah, Microsoft really does feel like this is a company worth a lot more than maybe it actually is. We talked about the control lead designer joining NetEase to make Anchor Point as a new subsidiary. Remedy's CEO says a short-term 45% Q1 revenue decline sets the stage for long-term growth. I don't know how you make that argument and people believe you. Remedy's prepared to tough out its revenue losses until it begins to release games again, starting with the near completed Alan Wake 2. So I guess they're just saying once Alan Wake 2 comes out, they'll make a bunch of profits there. I guess I hope they do. We talked about Metacritic promising better moderation post the Horizon DLC review bombing. Going forward, Metacritic will use new tools to try and curtail games from being review bombed by its users. Inherently, the problem here is that when you're running a review site and then you're saying the users who are reviewing the game are actually review bombing, you've turned yourself as the site maintainer against your actual fandom and the users of the site. And so you can't in any way give the impression that you're siding against the people who are coming to your site and giving you free content in the form of reviews. And that's exactly what they've done. Inherently, OpenCritic and Metacritic both have failed to prove themselves to be that useful as websites to me anyways. I am much more willing to believe reviews and the average percentage of positive reviews on Steam than bother to look at Metacritic or OpenCritic, both of which put extra emphasis on mainstream video game journalists having a louder say than your average person who bought and played the game, whereas Steam does not give special reviews or special coverage to people who review games. If they're a mainstream video game journalist, you could make yourself a curator on Steam, and then you'll make a curator review if you want, but anybody can do that, not just an elite subclass of game reviewers. Let's see. Moving on, Riot touts new employee benefits and more inclusion in its 2022 Impact Report. It's that time of year where Riot releases a new report highlighting how inclusive it's been for its employees and how its inclusive initiatives have affected the wider world. And as a gamer, I assume most people do not ever care about any of this, so there's really not a lot I can say about it. The question, as far as a gamer, would come down to, are Riot games getting better or worse? And do I personally want to play Riot games? I'd have to even figure out which game. I guess it's Valorant is probably the game in question mostly. And yeah, I don't have any real desire to play Valorant. Not anymore. I didn't care to play it yesterday, and I don't care to play it anymore today because employees get benefits. Employees all over the world in every job should get more benefits, and inclusion in general is a good idea. But neither one really affect games much, or they have yet to prove that they actually affect games in any way. If anything, a lot of inclusion programs lead to games being written worse, and employee benefits sometimes lead to employees doing a worse job because I guess they're not as hungry, for lack of a better term. And then Activision Blizzard is off to a strong 2023 thanks to Modern Warfare 2. And that's our last GameDeveloper.com article, which means we can now just burn through games fairly quickly. I'll give Bailout a chance, and we'll probably run into some adult games. This is yet another one, I think, of these adult game section games that mostly is just about a lady on a motorcycle running over food and thus eating it and getting fatter and fatter. It's like an inflation porn concept, and there's one pixely image here where it looks like the lady is topless, and so you're seeing nipples and as she's lying on her back. I guess the idea is that she was so fat she fell backwards on the bike. It's a weird fetish. Yeah, I guess at some point she gets so fat she loses her shirt. Yeah. It's $1.79. It's English only. It apparently contains sexual noises and expansive female nudity. Does just kind of feel like it is a weird, like, fat person fetish, fat lady fetish game. Which, in all fairness, for as many adult games that come out that are around furries and dick girls, some of the other fetishes probably should be touched upon every now and then. It still does very much feel like it's a troll game and a joke game more than anything else, but it's probably a step in the right direction for at least some more diversity in different types of games. I'll say, as an actual game, riding a motorcycle and trying to hit as much food as possible is an old school arcade style game, way better than just a simple box puzzle game or match 3 game. Here we have an SCP meme game, which, if this had a little bit better visual polish to it, I might say yes. It also is doing the whole Five Nights at Freddy's thing, which that would work fairly well with an SCP idea. I'm actually going to make a YouTube short around that one. Independent. and then Ambassador, and then Octodad, Student Edition, and then Snake Date. These are all the games that are free that just came out. And then we have yet another adult game. We were kind of short on adult games. Soulless Cities Heroes, SOLAS. It looks like it's a sexy beat 'em up game, is how it's describing it itself. The 3D CGI characters are not animated particularly great. It looks more like a last generation type animation, and probably when you're zoomed out and doing the beat 'em up sections, that's all that's needed. But when you start to get a little bit more zoomed in, it looks a little rough. It looks like there might be some custom character design, and then a bit of emphasis around bondage and stuff like that too. Like, it almost feels a little bit like the Rumble Roses Double X wrestling games, but those were, to my recollection for the time, a lot prettier looking and more around fake wrestling. Where this is just actual beat 'em up stuff. $16.99, English, allegedly full audio, and I'm gonna put it on the fault list because I would like to see the reception here on this game in particular. It's so far has 15 reviews that are 95% positive. But yeah, once again, it's a different kind of game with adult content instead of the same old visual novels. Let's see. Next we have Katana Ra Shinobi Rising. Not sure what kind of game this is. Stealth combat, it says. We'll give it a chance. Here we have Magical Drop 6, which it's not a game I really would have thought was going to come to Steam. I'm a little surprised by that. Square Wave doesn't look like anything. Trinity Trigger. Didn't think Trinity Trigger was a new game. There was that Gamatsu article talking about it, but I thought it was a game that had already come out. Trinity Trigger very possibly might be a somewhat big game come out lately. And then we have Roots of Paka, which looks almost like a caveman Stardew Valley type game. And I like the art style difference here, so I'm going to give it a chance. But in a lot of ways it does just very much feel like it is Stardew Valley if set in caveman times, which maybe that's enough of a difference anyways. Amanda the Adventurer. Looks like it's a horror asset flip game. It's rated very positively. I don't think I care to play it myself though, so I'll just make a YouTube short around it. Inherently, I think I probably do need to draw a line and say that I don't care to play a lot of these horror games that are just kind of walking simulator horror experiences. If I'm going to play a horror game, I want to play something that's a little bit more substantive, longer, has more gameplay mechanics. This Together in Battle doesn't look good enough. Echo of the Last Light. I think we could say no to this. Bound and Fairies. I think we can say no to this. This feels like a Chinese game. Shovel Boy. I think that's an easy no. Sagittarius looks like nothing. Toon Tower Defense is nothing. Monster Girl Manager. is something already on my follow list. I was expecting it to be in the Dueled section, but nope, doesn't seem like it actually is. It's rated very positively, so there is a decent argument to go ahead and just put this on the wish list. It has over 30 reviews, and I put it on the follow list because I saw it somewhere else. Your Average Bear. I will put this on the follow list even though it is over 30 views. Being released today and having 37 reviews, if I'm still iffy about it, I could see giving it more time. Anyways, that there is very much a value in waiting for people to review it for a few weeks, if not months, before looking at the average. Whereas otherwise you are just getting reviews from people who are super hyped around the game. Next we have a game called Hentai Senpai Tsukibi Neko Mimi no Yoru, which I knew what Yoru means, because no means the. So the Nico Mimi is a cat girl, obviously, or cat girls in general. It's a slide puzzle game with cat girls, and one of the cat girls was peeing, and you don't get a lot of that. Yeah, that, you know, waterworks and in general tend to be another finish that would be more things. I assume she's peeing, maybe she isn't. She might be squirting. See, the game says it features 16 sexy Neko Mimi to play with. It is just a slide puzzle game. The images look fine, and I will say the slide puzzle in general does look a little bit more complicated in that there are 4x4 grids instead of 3x3 grids, but not by much. The game is weirdly free to play, but then there's 4 bits of DLC, each for $3.59. Well, no, one of them is actually $6.29. So it seems like they're selling the same game over and over again with different character things. Of the top languages listed, English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish are listed. So not a real Asian language around this, even though it definitely looks like Asian anime. So effectively what you're doing is you're playing this for free to get 16 images for free to then be sold to collect and buy DLC for more images. And it seems to me like each DLC is adding over 120 pictures, and the one that was twice as expensive adds 244 pictures. So this really is just like an intro concept. At a certain level, it kind of makes some sense though, that you would make one app that was the core slide puzzle app, and then you would license a bunch of photos and sell them as DLC over a consistent returning period. So every month there was a new DLC with more pictures, instead of trying to sell different apps over and over again. Although, in all fairness, I think by selling different apps they can charge more. Plus, many of these apps barely have 20 or 30 pictures in them in the first place, and they're still selling for $2 or $3, whereas this one is giving 16 pictures away for free. I wouldn't say the pictures look amazingly special though, either. There really is nothing that would make any of the pictures ever stand out that much. Next we have Nobody Paradox. which doesn't look like anything. I was watching another YouTube channel and they accidentally put their uncensored version of their video on YouTube, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see if YouTube catches them on that. Rescue Team Magnetic Storm. This looks like this might be just a resource management game, but I'm going to give it a chance and make a YouTube short around it because this might be one of those kids games that's interesting enough. Desta, the Memories Between Dream Team Edition. This is almost like a dodgeball based strategy placement game. Yeah, I'll give that a chance. After Gym Simulator game. Looks like it's a mobile game, but there is potentially a experience as like a clicker or idle game that would make some sense there. Although at a certain point, you would have to have the characters just get incredibly muscly to the point of ridiculousness, even way further than this, where you just constantly make the characters' muscles bigger and bigger and bigger, or you would have them hit a maximum level and then retire and then start with another character. In its current form, though, it's going to be a no. Dungeon and grid puzzles. Doesn't look like much of anything. If anything, it feels like somebody just either licensed or downloaded some very basic images and then is trying to sell a very basic game. Desktop Hacker does not visually look appealing. Infectious Backrooms multiplayer, yet another meme Backrooms game. I'm just going to say no to all those. I don't feel like flooding YouTube with those kinds of shorts anyways. I'm already making way too many shorts anyways, so it definitely makes a lot of sense to curate it a little bit more. Shapes and Shots Prologue is a prologue, so no. Or just no in general, because it's not a good game. Ship Graveyard Simulator 2 is a prologue, so no. Village Rhapsody here feels like an adult game. A blushing lady with big chest. That being said, contains mild nudity content and sexually suggestive content. Please be aware. It's not in the adult section, and it does just kind of feel like it is. I wouldn't even really call it a RPG Maker game, other than the fact that this is very possible what our RPG Maker games look like when you use RPG Maker Unite. The English, Japanese, and Chinese. I'm going to give this a follow since it's overwhelmingly positive to think about it, but I'm not going to make a YouTube short around it. Here we have Evil Dead the game, which, yeah, I was very interested when I heard this game announced. You can see it's already very positive, but it is an online PvP only game. So there's a certain level here that it's just a game I'll never actually play. And even if I did want to play it, I'd probably not get around to playing it fast enough. Anyways, you are kind of all over the place because the Evil Dead series is all over the place. And noticeably, this Evil Dead the game is around the Evil Dead TV series and the Evil Dead movies that exist at the moment, but they're about to put out a new Evil Dead movie called Evil Dead Rising that I don't think is going to be that connected to the original Evil Dead series, really. It's going to be much more of a horror movie from the looks of it, and it's likely not going to include Ash in any way. Or any of the characters from the movie show. So So I'm going to take this off the following list, but I will definitely make a YouTube short around it. Or I won't make a YouTube short around it, and then I will, because it's rated M for mature, and that'll just be that. So I guess this may be my only endorsement I can potentially even give, even though it's not really an endorsement, to potentially check out Evil Dead, the game. Because, yeah, of reasons. Rift Loopers, I'll give that a chance. A lot of these games I'm giving a chance may be multiplayer only games, so I need to investigate that more. This minor scale looks like it might be an interesting tower defense game, but probably isn't. I'll give it a chance though. Cassette Beasts we already talked about. Savage 2020. I think we could say no to that. Quiet Soul. I'm trying to rush here because I need to go to the bathroom. Mystery in the Office. Richard Depps. Give that a chance. This may have come out of early access because it was already on follow list, or I may have just followed it earlier. 200 Tolerance doesn't look like anything. Pandemonium doesn't look like anything. Good Place to Die doesn't look like anything. Rudra, A Tale of Time. Might be something to that. Witch Rise. First person shooter. I'll give that a chance. Actually, I won't give it a chance, but I'll put it on the YouTube Shorts. It's just not really going to be the kind of game I would play. Combo Bomb might be something. And see, yeah, when I have to rush because I either have to go to the bathroom or because I'm emotionally exhausted, mentally exhausted, decisions come harder to make. So that is the danger, certainly, of pushing things, putting the games, looking at the games at the end of the stream. But it worked out fairly well in this case because we are done, and I was only starting to really make lesser quality decisions in the last 20 or 30 games we looked at. That's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.